With DevStream 188 at PAX, D have given us 2 new dev workshops covering changes coming with May's Yareli Prime update, and then the June Isleweaver update. Let's go over these and give my input on what's hot and what's not. Valkyr is the headliner, getting a reboot to her existing abilities. Her passive, on top of soft landings, will grant her a 300% melee damage bonus built up by melee damage, melee kills, and especially finishers or mercy kills. The damage bonus is additive to mods like Pressure Point. This builds and functions like a weaker version of Garuda's passive. In addition, Valkyr can cheat death by consuming her rage meter so long as it's above 3/4 full. D state 75% in the workshop, but that is confusing for a rage meter that goes to 300% damage. They mean 3/4 or 225% melee damage. When triggered, Valkyr's rage vanishes and she becomes invulnerable for 3 seconds. This perk has no cooldown on it, which has a number of people speculating if this is her new high-density tanking strategy. Hit things quickly enough in those few seconds so that the next blow also isn't lethal. I'm not sure how I feel about that if it works that way, for reasons I'll cover when I talk about Hysteria. Alongside the passive change, Valkyr's base armor and health have been buffed on both the normal and prime versions. These changes are listed as the rank 0 values, though a level 30 Valkyr has 100 extra health, which means the updated, unmodded effective hit points, or EHP, are a little less than double at max rank. So far, nothing groundbreaking or inspired. It's a soft combo of Garuda and Nidus, plus a couple stat buffs. Ripline is getting a significant do-over. It moves faster and more responsibly, it pulls Valkyr the entire distance, unless she jumps out of it, and is becoming an initiator ability. When Valkyr grapples an enemy, she goes to the enemy while performing a radial pull. On landing, she delivers a melee attack automatically. Combine this with the upcoming buffs to her Talons, and that Talons have 100% follow through, this can be a powerful opening attack into groups. The range of the radial pull is listed at 7 meters, just below that of subsumed lava. Personally, I'd take it to 8 meters, so that the pull effect isn't less than a subsumed ability, but the other features do balance that out. The augment is also being refreshed, granting free riplines while midair and boost parkour velocity. All of this is seriously positive changes that I am happy for. Warcry is a well-functioning ability that doesn't need much, but it's still been buffed many times over. It can now be recast, allowing you to benefit from strength buffs at ideal times, cast it when it's convenient, and avoid downtime with the ability, especially on land loss. The duration is increasing by 1/3, the range is becoming affinity range, which will be more of a boon to subsumed usage on low range frames, and it can be cast while moving for more fluid gameplay. All of this is a direct upgrade. Warcry does lose the ability to slow enemies, but then you usually don't want to try and apply a slow to enemies with a set and forget buffing ability, so this is a non-issue. No notes from me, it's just better than before. Paralysis, however, will get notes from me. D adding in some features on top of what it already does. Specifically, it already spends 5 energy and 1/3 of your existing shields to stun nearby enemies for a few seconds. The stun duration is very short, just a couple seconds, and is accompanied by a ridiculously tiny amount of damage. The new features apply melee damage vulnerability for an undisclosed amount of time, slows enemies, has slightly increased base damage in basically all scenarios, and is more fluid to cast. In exchange, it no longer is powered by your mostly unused shields. Instead, the cast cost has gone up from 5 energy to 50. This is a huge increase in cost for an ability that, honestly, struggles to compete with subsumed raw. 50% melee damage vulnerability on specific enemies versus subsumed 30% damage bonus to all enemies for the duration, while also buffing non-melee, also buffing allies, and double buffing status effects. I find it hard to be excited for a base 10 meter radius tank debuff at 50 energy cost like this. The ability doesn't synergize well with itself neither. Stunned enemies usually don't need to be slowed. Enemies hit with finishers usually don't need extra damage vulnerabilities. Enemies killed because they're tagged with weaknesses don't need to be stunned or slowed anymore. The ability identity isn't really there for me. Its augment, which currently groups most affected enemies and makes the stun longer, will be made more reliable at grouping. The current quirk of the stun duration buff being tied to strength, not duration, isn't changing, and the cast cost is still 10 times higher with this update. Overall, this feels like a downgrade to me, and remains a solid start for subsumed abilities instead. If it was substantially cheaper, and the stun at base lasted long enough for many finishers to be used, this would key into the finisher bonus to her rage passive, and would be more broadly usable. As it stands, it just seems expensive for what little it achieves in its limited radius. Which brings us to Hysteria. This change comes in 3 parts: survival, damage, and cost. The energy drain is coming down from max 15 to max 10 per second, and the cost of self-damage if the ability ends at the wrong time is gone. The energy drain is still twice that of Titania's Razor Wing, but will now be 1/3 cheaper than Mace's Peacemaker. Make of that what you will, though I feel it could afford to be lower still. Survival is what's got a lot of people kicking up a fuss. There's no mincing of words here, it's a nerf. Valkyr goes from 100% damage resistance to less than 100% damage resistance. Regardless of your position on that, it is a nerf. She'll be relying on her health and armor, while gaining triple armor bonus from Warcry during Hysteria, and will retain status immunity. So why is it happening? According to DE, they want to make her actually use all that armor and health she's got. What's the point of a frame with stats and buffs it doesn't use most of the time? So that makes sense. The questions I have are, 1, is this enough to tank all relevant content without onerous levels of investment? And 2, what is DE's plan with regards to different tanking strategies and the conversation around level scaling? This is going to get quite opinionated, but with numbers to back it up. It is often repeated by many players that health tanks cannot keep up in high levels. When high level was level 150 to 200, this wasn't really true. Health tanks can absolutely survive that. But high level isn't just level 150 to 200 steel path, with anything beyond being the domain of hardcore endurances. Between Void Cascade, the Circuit, and now both Deep and Temporal Archimedia, players are routinely accessing much higher level content. This is running into a problem of indefinite immortality. It's no secret that Revenant is the most used Warframe. A big part of that is he provides indefinite immortality, including to his team now. But it's not just Revenant. Shield gating spam is indefinite immortality, and until this workshop goes live, Valkyr 2 has indefinite immortality. Immortality through iframes, rolling guard, or highly restricted features like Wukong's passive aren't too problematic. They may require timing, or they have cooldowns, they have limits, and cannot carry a mission. However, when immortality is indefinite, in that you can remain immortal for as long as you want regardless of the scale of damage incoming, this runs into problems. Most specifically, there is nothing D can do to challenge immortality without taking it away. If you're immortal, what's the difference in enemy damage between level 20 and level 2000? Nothing. You're immortal. The enemies could break out of DE's code and surpass level 10,000 and still be no greater threat. Meanwhile, hit point tanks, a scalable and classic form of survival, have to be increasingly invested into in order to survive, running out of power when we run out of useful mods and buffs to equip. It is my honest opinion that a scaling and fallible tank is healthier for the game. To reach limits, to have to make sacrifices, to have room for ever more power, as D inevitably brings out higher tier threats and higher tier rewards. Just look at Split Chamber versus Galvanized Chamber. On a polarized slot, they are identical drain, yet Galvanized Chamber is strictly superior as soon as you have one kill stack on it. Higher level, higher tier upgrades replacing old ones. This to me is the basic loop of a long-term gear-based MMO. This opinion, however, is not reflected in Warframe's design. We have health hit point tanks and shield hit point tanks, but also a significant reliance on shield gate tanking, overguard gate tanking, invisibility tanking, and energy tanking, all of which are broadly level agnostic. When I say energy tanking, this includes Rhino's Iron Skin, Revenant's Mesmer Skin, and Nyx's Absorb with Assimilate. In fact, it was just in December that Assimilate changed from being a damage-scaled tank, such that more damage depleted your energy faster, to a simple energy drain, which works at all levels of play once you have the energy economy for it. D have stated that addressing the enemy damage scaling to match hit point tanks would need a fundamental overhaul of their systems entirely, and I recognise that too. Personally, I wouldn't want enemy damage scaling brought down. If the difference between level 150 and 500 and 10,000 gets flattened out, what's even the point of having levels? Level 150 to level 500 increases enemy damage by over 6 times. From level 150 to 10,000 increases enemy damage by about 650 times. The amount of tanking needed is enormously different between tiers, as it should be. Except at very low levels, increasing enemy level by roughly 60% increases their damage by roughly 100%. So long as we have access to the mods and features to scale our own tank accordingly, this is fine. The broad concern is that Valkyr won't have that. She'll have her increased base armor, her greater warcry buffs, her status immunity, sure. Is that enough? Let's say you're running a 200% strength Valkyr Prime. Today versus Workshop with no other modding, that takes her from 1470 armor with Warcry up to 3740 armor with Warcry and Hysteria active. That means she'd be tanking 2.28 times better. If we feed that into the equation for damage scaling by level, new Valkyr Prime would push 70% higher into levels than before to get the same difficulty in tanking, when she's not immortal. In other words, if a build for her would struggle at level 200 previously when not using Hysteria, it'll struggle at level 340 after the changes. You might be wondering why I'm focused on the armor and not the increased health. In truth, effective hit points does also matter, but not as much as damage reduction. Effective hit points is only important so far as to how quickly you can react to a bad situation and recover your hit points. If your effective hit points are too low, it doesn't matter how good your healing may be, you die before you can use it. On the other hand, if your effective hit points are plenty fine, but your damage resistance is too low, then you'd be unable to recover hit points fast enough to stop the bleeding. Outside of unchallenging gameplay, effective heal rate is the superior metric, and the best modifier to one's effective heal rate and effective hit points simultaneously is damage reduction. This is the dial D can tweak, with Valkyr's move from immortality to health tanking. We see one such dial in action with her new lifesteal on Hysteria. Instead of it being an unchanging 5% of all damage dealt, she will gain a flat 50 health per hit multiplied by strength. This, too, is a nerf. If you would deal 1000 damage per hit previously, that'd be 50 health per hit. Warframes tend to do quite a bit more damage than 1000 per hit. However, a Valkyr running 200% strength and base health, getting 100 health per hit, would need to hit just 6 times to full heal from 1 health remaining. Depending on how hits are considered, this could mean a single swing hitting 6 enemies, or a single move hitting 1 enemy 6 times, or it could mean 6 separate attack inputs. I currently don't have that detail for certain, as the workshop hasn't been implemented and doesn't specify. Overall, it strikes me that D would do well to consider a conversation on tanking. What levels of tanking are reasonably expected? Where do they see hit point tanking versus indefinite immortality and the long-term scaling of Warframe? Especially as access to higher levels becomes more pronounced and encouraged. Will we see superior upgrades to lower tier Warframe tech, such as level 400 plus tier replacements for Vitality, Steel Fiber, Shock Absorbers, or even Blind Rage? Isn't it strange that some of the most important and viable mods come from a mission you access before reaching Jupiter? That to me looks like room to make high level hit point tanks more viable, without making low level players too godly with their existing kits. Ultimately, D's current goal and vision is what I'm looking for here, to properly rate how well Valkyr and other frames fit into that vision. But as it turns out, Reb put out a Devshort while I was making this video, which addressed this a little bit. They've tested new Valkyr in EDA and ETA and are satisfied with the results. By the sounds of it, the expectation is that Valkyr will be relying on her passive to tank high level missions more than her armor.
The gray bar invulnerability, where you can stand there and be invulnerable, has been sort of reappropriated to active invulnerability. The rage meter, that is a consumed, like, save from death, save from death, save from death. So in something like EDA, as long as you're actively playing, you will build your rage meter up to be invulnerable. I think the way to think about it, and with the intention right now, is active invulnerability rather than passive.
Well, there's some clarity, and for me, this doesn't sit right. The whole explanation in the workshop is that Valkyr has armor she isn't using. If the intention is to survive through active indefinite immortality, surely that undermines the whole point of armor in the first place. The devil will be in the details, but I would much rather that death save be plan B, not plan A. I know D are often inspired by other material, and potentially in this case the rage of a fancy barbarian, which is maintained by endlessly attacking. But even those rely on health and damage reduction, not immortality. As for Valkyr's Talons, they are getting buffs. They already received the overhaul that all Exalteds got, permitting the use of melee arcanes and acolyte mods. Now they'll also be getting a far better damage distribution, far better stances, and a range buff. For damage distribution, it's moving from a perfect three-way split of impact, puncture, and slash, aka IPS, into 75% slash and 25% puncture. Let's be real, impact and puncture suck. I only use impact procs when I have them readily available, usually forced, to make annoying enemies get into mercy threshold. Mostly, they otherwise don't matter. Puncture? Outside of force synergy like melee doughty, I don't think I'd notice if puncture vanished tomorrow. Slash is cash and Talons are striking rich. That said, they still have a 10% status chance, reaching only 54% with Weeping Wounds. That's where the far better stances come in. 4 of Valkyr's moves are called out in the workshop, receiving more fluid movement to make her smoother to play, as well as roughly double damage across her moveset, and a number of 4 slash procs added in for additional oomph. This is mostly great, with the exception of the layout. DE, I hope this is on your radar, because showing the movesets as this is a poor look. Here's what a normal set of moves looks like. Each move is marked by its single input to make it happen, the results of that move, and the next is a new paragraph. Valkyr's movesets are a broken format hellscape. Little thing, but important. As for the range, oh boy, her range on Talons is shooting up from 1.7 meters to 2.15 meters. Yeah, it's a buff, but not only is it only a small one, it's stopping at that weird 2.15. Why the extra decimal place? Why not 2.2 meters? Is that 5 centimeter difference really so important? I know it sounds a little nitpicky, but there'd be nothing to nitpick if she wasn't given this odd extra decimal. Overall, the Talons are just a lot stronger. Ripline looks amazing, and Warcry is still Warcry, but more convenient. Paralysis, on the other hand, looks too expensive for what it gives, and Hysteria's tanking change, I hope, is opening a conversation on what tanking is supposed to look like at level 500, seeing as that's the elite Temple Archimedia content Valkyr fans will want to be able to use her in. To be clear, while I would welcome such a conversation and design communication, that isn't present in this workshop. Valkyr aside, there are a bundle of other changes which by and large are very positive. Let's dive in. Arsenal categories are being introduced to make sorting frames and weapons easier. For the frames, they'll be categorized on 5 types: damage, crowd control, support, survival, and stealth. One example given is Ash, who'll be damage and stealth. For new players to passively understand a frame's capabilities, I get this. Super summarization in a category system, I'm not opposed to it. The rest of us can chuckle at some of the choices, I'm sure. For weapons though, this is much better. Sorting weapons into categories that simply already existed is a very welcome change that I'm completely here for. This will also mirror sortie requirements, so no more searching up sniper and ending up with something completely incompatible. I have 2 criticisms. 1, choosing to list Zors and Kitguns as miscellaneous seems wrong. Their build forms have very distinct and immutable roles, like the gaze always being a beam and a one-handed Balor always being a dagger. They should be in those categories. 2, it seems wrong that melee categories are these odd groupings, rather than being a drop-down box for the different actual categories of melee. We have distinct melee types distinguished by their stances, so I don't see the need to muddy the waters there. These are small details, but it stands out to me as a little odd. Next up is a new enemy variety. Bailiffs have been made into mini-boss units with a telegraph charge and slam. The telegraphing I'm all here for. The animation looks a bit rough, but this is a workshop, so I'll assume some cleanup is coming. The mini-boss tag I am concerned about. We have heavy units, and this looks like a heavy unit. If it's being labelled a mini-boss, I'm concerned it'll be shipping with damage attenuation. I'll say my piece outright. Damage attenuation belongs only on actual boss-type units with appropriate rewards. Common units with common loot should not have attenuation. If we kill it instantly, it's because we've invested in our arsenal to kill it instantly. Let us have this. Onto ballistas, getting better tracking for their charge and fire mechanic. I like this. One small detail though is accessibility. Red-green colorblindness is the most common type and easy to work around. The charging beam should be some type of blue, not green. This isn't unprecedented in having blue attacks from enemies. The fragmented one uses blue-tinted light beams for its charging shot, and shock Xmas use blue electric attacks. Let's just be accessible. Third is the Eviscerator, gaining this grenade attack in a line. So long as we can still shoot these grenades like normal, or swallow them as Grendel, I am fine with this. It looks interesting and adds positional variety. Then we have the miscellaneous stuff coming with Yareli Prime. While Kubrows no longer defaulting to hostile is cute. I consider this a buff to sneaky gameplay, which is nice. Arbitration honours will include arbitration drops as a pity shop. This is amazing. Sure, you can trade for items, but I appreciate a lot of people want to directly earn the rewards themselves. This enables that in a smoother fashion, which I'm entirely on board with. Down with endless RNG. Archon shard removal cost spreading and reduction is just an absolute win. With normal shards being cheaper for experimentation and all resource types being utilised, this makes trying things out much more accessible. Love it. And then, Ivara gets sniped. D are choosing to boost the crit from 25% to 50% on her concentrated arrow, give it even more power on hitting weak spots, adding a status chance where one didn't exist for her AoE, but then adding a line of sight check. They justify this as it's an ability. But it's not just an ability, it's a weapon. Explosive weapons breach cover, this is just how they work. Balefire breaches cover, and that's an ability weapon. I don't understand why this change is happening, to be quite honest, and why specifically Ivara. Moving on. Loadout swapping in the Archimedia screens is a nice quality of life. Gemini skin and emote updates are welcome, if somewhat irrelevant to this channel, and then the reduction of Dedicants' health by 30%. D says this is based on community feedback. This is not the feedback we are giving. Minus 30% does not address their damage attenuation being the problem. It's silly and jarring coming across these super tanky enemies that exist only to slow us down for no reward. They're not a threat, they're not a challenge, they're a table leg for us to hit with our shin and be pissed about. Either drop the attenuation or give them boss rewards. Lastly in the Yareli Prime update pack are some Captura quality of life changes. As I'm no Captura artist and barely dabble, I'll leave any real assessment of this to those who know better. After that, we have the changes due with Isleweaver. D are continuing to address the new player path through Junctions. They serve as teaching points, guiding players to experience the systems Warframe has one by one to progress around the map. First change is that players will no longer be able to load into a junction that they have not finished the checklist for. This was confusing some players who'd load into a locked room they could do nothing in. Instead, they'll be able to interact with the junction UI to better see the tasks at hand and be able to go from said task directly to where they need to be to complete it. On top of this, D are making each junction task grant a reward directly rather than receiving a large bunch of rewards at once on junction completion. I like this a lot, allowing for a more drip feed of new things rather than a large dump in which one can easily lose track of what was acquired. Looking at the samples of junction tasks and rewards, we have these. For Venus, completing the Vor's Prize quest awards the Dreamer's Bond aura. The next task is to equip that aura, awarding Chilling Grasp, and rank up the aura to receive Attacks on Blueprint. I like both of these tasks as that explicitly directs players to see that auras exist, where they go, and see their mod value as a capacity buff, not a drain. Brilliant. Once Taxon starts building, the player can move through the junction. Mercury requires completion of Vox Solaris, which is standard. The next task directs the player to buy a Rhino Warframe blueprint for credits from the market. This is a great task, outright directing players to see the credit purchase side of the market, not just the platinum side. A very welcome task indeed. The next ones, however, need tweaking. Defeat the Jackal and collect all Rhino blueprints concerns me. For a very new player, this could be about a dozen missions into the game. They're now told to repeat a single mission, a good thing in itself to teach about getting different drops, but to repeat it enough times to get all Rhino pieces. When you're that new to the game, new to the mechanics, and wanting to explore more of the game's content, getting stuck on the same mission 3 times over is already an odd barrier. Having to do it more than 3 times due to bad luck will be painful. This will cause people to quit and give up for being hit with a wall of bad luck too soon. I would have that one changed to defeat the Jackal twice. Doing it twice will show the player that the mission doesn't go away, the assassination is repeatable. Assuming the vast majority of players load into that mission without a pre-made squad, DE can also hard-code the matchmaking and rewards of their first 2 runs. The first 2 runs of any new player to Fossa should be solo, even if they queue public. Pre-mades would still get around that. Run 1 can give a Rhino New Optics, and Run 2 can give a Rhino Systems. In this way, they'd be guaranteed to get different drops and guaranteed to be able to experience the fight at their own pace. This then brings me to the other task of starting building a Rhino Warframe. This would require having built all 3 components at the moment, adding yet another roadblock in a time gate. I would swap that to start building the Rhino Systems, which is the guaranteed drop from Run 2 in my other suggestion. This would remove the bad luck wall and time gate, while still introducing players to repeat farms of what appears lore-wise to be a one-off mission, and introducing players to the drop table mechanic of assassinations. Then onto the Mars Junction. It has the once await quest to get the Void Relic segment, simple enough. Next task, to activate a quest from the Codex, which is a good direction to send players through. Then a simple mission with the Boltor that you got on the previous junction, no sweat. Lastly, purchase a weapon from the market. This one should be rephrased to match Rhinos, using credits, purchase a weapon blueprint from the market. I still maintain one of the worst UI choices Warframe has is that opening the arsenal meets a new player with nothing but platinum costs. I quit Warframe the first time I tried it, in part because of this very thing. I saw a very in-my-face cash shop asking me to spend far more on single weapons than I dream of for a supposedly free-to-play game. I don't want to get all tinfoil hat here, but I do have to wonder about the value this might represent to DE, given the presence of the premium currency option front and center in such a major part of the new player experience all these years. Even the show detail section that was added long after I started is insufficient. If a new player were to click on Attica and go to show details, which still doesn't suggest to me that's finding the non-platinum method, it doesn't actually reveal a free-to-play method. Reading this page, as it shows itself to me, it says I need to be MR7 to get and use this weapon, that I can spend some platinum, and it looks like I might be spending that platinum to buy the blueprint. Those in the know can see the words Tenno Lab on the blueprint info panel, which is doing absolutely nothing to indicate the blueprint can be acquired for basically free from a clan's Tenno Lab. My point is that any steps towards making it clear to new players how they can unlock the game by playing the game, not paying the game, is a win. Big wins are still there for the taking in that arena. Beyond Junctions, new players are getting quicker access to Arbitrations. These will now unlock with completion of the Eris Junction rather than completion of all pre-New War nodes. This makes it faster to access than Steel Path, as it should, and it is still later than access to sorties despite similar levels of gameplay. I like this a lot, bringing players into more advanced and mechanically involved content sooner. Quest changes, there's only a couple bits here. The Natah quest will be getting a taunting introduction from Tile Regger. This is a good change, as it improves the flow, and more crucially, gives quest talk at the player's convenience rather than during loud and distracting combat. Solid change. On the new war, D are floating an address of the Railjack Section. It's a small section, but also inescapable once started. D are considering buffing the Railjack or weakening the enemies due to the difficulty of the fight if started with a low-level Railjack. Buffing the Railjack itself isn't needed in my opinion. A player's Railjack temporarily just being stronger for the sake of it seems weird and clunky. Likewise, weakening the enemies serves to cheapen the encounter and leave one wondering how there's a threat in the first place. I can suggest one better. The single biggest value that a solo player can have in Railjack is NPC crew. As the new player goes into the fight, likely with anything other than the max 3 crew, they can receive a transmission from Fortuna, from the Solaris that said new player is already familiar and friendly with. They see just how dire things are, and Ticker has managed to gather some Solaris to join in on the Railjack. These Solaris will be temporary crew, have a hidden 5 stars in all stats, and auto-assign to the roles of gunnery and engineering. In this way, the new player will be shown the value of NPC crew, where to get them, and be fully geared up for a war so serious that they need the extra hands on their own ship. Oh, and when the war inevitably goes wrong and the player loads later into Fortuna, it'll hit just that much harder, knowing the Solaris were there in the fight with them. The voice lines in the Railjack section could even foreshadow this, with carefully chosen lines. In my opinion, that should make the section very manageable to new players while being explicitly visible that they're being supported, but not in a way that seems like dumbing down the mission. Scrolling down, there's the Vor Rework. This is something that honestly will just have to be experienced rather than read. Suffice to say, Vor is getting new attacks, new arenas, a new process in general. We'll have to see how it feels when it arrives. General quality of life will be seeing the cost for Rhino move to just Earth and Venus material cost, to line up with the junction requirements. This is good for making Rhino very early game accessible. Incarnon rotating shop. D are looking at addressing player concerns with the circuit progression in general, but at the very least, you'll be able to spend Platinum to directly obtain both the Incarnon adapter and all resources needed for installation via Cavallero for any Incarnon in that week's circuit rotation. I know it may seem weird to be celebrating a cash shop expansion, especially after what I said about the new player experience, but I am celebrating it. And finally, plant acquisition. It always seemed odd to me that by scanning a plant, we would receive a physical item. It seems DE agree that it's odd and are switching to a direct interaction. But DE, Reb, Pablo, whoever is in charge of this one, why does that say hold together? Is this No Man's Sky now? Are we scared of accidentally picking up loot? Are we looking to add in quick time events to reloading and ability casting too? Please, I just want to know who sees hold to interact with basic items and figures, yes, this is the fast-paced and fun gameplay I want in my looter shooter. Overall, the quality of life changes look good. Some pain points, some missteps, like the hold up on harvesting plants, or building Rhino for a junction, which I do hope gets addressed. But broadly, I like the changes. This has been a longer and unusual video on the channel, as I usually focus on what is rather than what may be, so let me know what you think. That's all from me for now, so as always, read workshops, give feedback, and fight well, Tenno.